Hey, I'm Andrea Kita, and I'm a professor at East Carolina University and a folklorist. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what isn't folklore. So a lot of times when my students first start to read about folklore and we start discussing it in class, they get to this point where they're like, well, everything is folklore. So what isn't folklore? And I agree with them. Everything is folklore, but it's all in how you approach it. So certain things technically are not folklore, but aspects of them can be folklore. So let me just give you some examples. It's a little easier to talk in those ways. So something like popular culture. So say that you're a huge fan of a certain television show. That television show itself is not folklore, right? Because it is produced, it is popular culture. However, all the things that surround that show might be folklore. So they might be using folklore in the writing of the show. There might be folklore about the show. So there might be even traditions that shows create. Anything from holidays that are celebrated to folk speech, a lot of different things like that. So there's a lot of things that they can inspire. So even if something is a television show, it can inspire types of folklore. Anything from fan fiction to getting together with your friends to watch it, to having parties about it. Like I said, to celebrating holidays that are maybe celebrated within the context of the show. Folk speech, so using different terminology that the show uses and that becoming a part of your everyday life. Those kind of aspects of it are folklore, but the show itself might not be. However, the show is probably influenced by folklore in a lot of different ways, especially if we look at a lot of different plots to both literature, television, radio, everything. A lot of times they're influenced by folklore. So they might use some folkloric aspects like bringing in an urban legend, or bringing in a belief or something along those lines. So sometimes there's this negotiation between folklore and popular culture, which is really, really interesting because sometimes that can actually go back into the folk culture and become the primary belief. So maybe the show is inspired by something, a belief about something like, we'll just use this as an example. Salt across the doorway keeps away spirits. That showing up in a show has been influenced by folklore. That's something that people have done in the past. However, because it ends up in the show, more people actually know about it. So then you actually have people participating in it more often. So their influence, they might have first learned about it from the television show, but that show is inspired by folklore. So there's this constant negotiation between folklore and popular culture where they're constantly feeding off of each other. So sometimes I'll hear something about, especially in my supernatural class, one of my students will bring up a belief. And I'll think like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I know what movie that's from. And they might not because they're younger than me or because maybe that was their first introduction to it. But that will also actually enter the culture as folklore. So a good example of this is 3:33 being the new witching hour. So historically, midnight used to be the witching hour, but I feel like that's maybe part of the reason why that's not anymore is midnight isn't that late to us. It used to be very late, and it's not so much anymore because, we have electric light and we don't have to go to bed just when it gets dark. So it seemed like that idea of a witching hour had to shift. Now, there were several movies that listed things happening at 3:33. And so you see this in several movies where, the person wakes up in the middle of the night, they look at their clock, it's 3:33, and then bad things start happening. So that actually kind of influenced other people thinking like, oh, okay, there must be something about that time. So they started using the term witching hour, which would have been a more traditional term for midnight, about that specific time. So that's where the popular culture kind of was influenced by folklore and then influenced more people to believe in a different kind of folklore later on. So those kind of things, like I said, they constantly feed off of each other. So you can't really dismiss popular culture as not being folklore. It isn't folklore as it is part of, a thing that someone creates, but those people might be influenced by folklore and they might actually be creating more folklore. So that's one of the really cool parts about how folklore and popular culture really intersect. And one of the ways that popular culture is technically not folklore, however, there's a lot of influence from folklore and popular culture influences a lot of folklore.